You can now follow me on all my social media platforms to find out who my latest guest will be. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notifications button so you're notified for when my next podcast goes live.
First of all, he was not shot in the head. Most people believe that. He was pistol whipped. He suffered some severe lacerations. Had he been shot in the head at point blank range, there would never have been a 2pac death row. He'd have been dead right then and there. He was pistol whipped over the head. When he tried to pull his own pistol out of his waistband in the heat of the moment, he was trying to pull his own pistol out and he shoots himself, and that bullet goes through his leg, through his groin, and back in, so he shoots himself. Yeah. So for instance, in Las Vegas, 2pac had no business running over and assaulting Orlando Anderson. That was not 2pac's business. That was gang shit that 2pac shouldn't have had anything to do with. And so when he decided to take it upon himself to go and act like he was, representing this gang, that's when he made a fatal mistake. So they start putting the wheels into motion to go and retaliate. They know where 2pac's going to be. They know where Suge's going to be. They go and approach a guy who was affiliated with Bad Boy, at least a guy that was affiliated with Puffy. And they say, hey, we have a beef now. This guy offers to give them a gun. He gives Keefe D, which was Orlando Anderson's uncle, a gun. They get into a car and then they set off to find 2pac and Suge. Suge Knight obviously now has lost not only his bodyguard, Jake Robles, after the shooting in Atlanta. Now he's lost 2pac in Las Vegas. And, for all intent and purposes, they're kind of losing the war. And so, he knows that he has to answer for the murder of 2pac. And so he sets things in motion in order to have Biggie killed. No, Suge Knight's not ever going to sit down and tell the truth to law enforcement. You got to understand who Suge Knight is and the nature of Suge Knight. I mean, Suge Knight is about Suge Knight. Suge Knight's about Suge Knight only. He doesn't give a shit about justice. A lot of people out there that are, attaching themselves to conspiracy theories. And there's people that are out there thinking 2pac's alive. There's people that are out there thinking that Suge killed 2pac. There's people that are out there thinking the government killed 2pac. There's people that are out there thinking the police killed Biggie. So, there's all of these different points of view. I know what I know, and I believe what I believe. And so I'm settled with that.
Boom, we're on. And today's guest, we've got Greg Kading, 20 years detective, LAPD, works in one of the biggest unsolved murder cases. Both Biggie and 2pac, you came in, was it 9 years later, Greg, for this case?
Yeah, well, 2pac was murdered in 96 and Biggie in 97. I didn't come on the case until 2006. So yeah, approximately 9 years after BIG was killed is when I began to work on the investigation.
First of all, how are you, brother?
I am really good, thank you. We're just kind of rolling with the punches over here in the US, as I know you guys are kind of rolling with the punches over there in the UK and just trying to figure out what the world's going to do with itself.
Yeah, it's crazy times, but all we can do is soldier on. I always go back to the start of my guests. First, Greg, just to get a bit of information about yourself, where you grew up and how it all began.
Yeah, so I grew up in California, Northern California initially, and then moved to Southern California. And, typical childhood, played sports, had friends, got into some trouble. And then when I was about 20 years old, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do with myself. And a mentor of mine, who was actually a friend of mine's dad, encouraged me to join the sheriff's department. And he was a sheriff. And he says, Greg, you're kind of aimless right now. You don't have a whole lot going on. And I needed a job. And so he suggested I apply for the sheriff's department. And I did. And I got a job and I went through the academy. And then I decided I wanted to transfer to Los Angeles because I thought it would be more exciting to work up in the big city. And so I applied for the LAPD, went through another academy, and then ultimately began working, continuing my career in Los Angeles, and did that, collectively for 25 years, and then retired in 2010. And because of the Biggie investigation, I wrote a book after retiring, and then it kind of went on its own journey into documentary and limited series and podcasts.
Yeah, very popular. Obviously, such a massive subject. Two of the greatest rappers of all time. Two young kids with had such high popularity at the time, kind of just going through the ranks. And obviously, when that stuff happens, it brings eyes from all around the world. But how was before we start, what was going through the academy like for you, Greg?
It was not too tough. The academy's made, well, it tries to weed out the people that probably shouldn't be there. So intellectually, if you just don't have the capability of wrapping your head around law, and if physically, if you don't have the ability to perform at a standard level, and then ethically, what kind of person are you? And so if you're a decent human being in decent shape with decent intellectual capabilities, you can get through the academy. But if you're flawed in any of those areas, then you're going to struggle and probably be disqualified.
Because you've worked 200 cases, I believe, for LAPD. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, when you're going, cases, what does that mean? So when you're working as a crash officer, I worked gangs for a long time, and you investigate a lot of gang crime. And then I got into narcotics and investigate all types of narcotic activity. And most of the time, gang and narcotics were all integrated and collectively working. And then homicides, I started in a cold case. And so we would just go through old cases and seeing if there was anything that needed to still be done, or if there's any new evidence. And collectively, I think, over the period of time that I was assigned a cold case, I reviewed about 200 cases.
How many gangs are in LA? How many different gangs?
Oh, hundreds. There's too many to count. I mean, it's hard to keep track. And then, because we had gangs, and then we had tagging crews, and is there a difference between a gang and a tagging crew? And so, you got to differentiate what you mean, by a gang. Car clubs sometimes would be perceived as a gang. Motorcycle clubs could be perceived as a gang. So there's just so many different facets of it. But just the typical gangs, as we kind of think about in common parlance, hundreds of them. And some were small and some were large. Some would have hundreds of members, and some would have 20 members.
Who was the toughest gang you'd seen or came up against? Obviously, you've got your bikers, your Mexicans, and was there a certain gang that stood out for you that was very well organized?
Well, they're all very loosely organized. Actually, they're not well organized. It's not organized like we consider like the mafia, or organized crime, but they're organized that there is a hierarchy. There is, the OGs, shot callers, and then the young kids, and the guys that go out and do the crimes, and then the guys that are selling the dope, and the guys that are just hanging on. So there's all different kind of components to it. Obviously there's transnational gangs, like the El Salvadorian gangs, particularly Marta Salvatrucha, and I'm drawing a blank on the one of the biggest gangs in the world right now from El Salvador, but those are huge international gangs. Then you have your local gangs, and they're all dangerous in their own way. They're all capable of creating havoc, but some at just much larger levels.
Yeah.
So the black gangs were more or less localized to LA, and then of course over the years they began to spread. They'd kind of tether out into Atlanta or Detroit, or originally it was just Bloods and Crips in Los Angeles, and well, now there's Bloods and Crips in cities all over the United States for sure, but probably little facets of them outside of the United States.
Gun crime in US is massive. Not so much here in the UK. It's more knife crime. Yes, guns are used, but not as frequently. Were you ever in danger yourself, Greg, by getting shot at in America?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember one time I'm driving in a black and white, and I was in danger. I didn't even know about it. We were driving through a park, And it was late at night, and I heard a loud boom, and I'm like, shit, I think that was a gunshot. And I remember I thought we had hit something in the park, like ran over a big branch or something. We got back to the station, and there was a shotgun slug hole right under the passenger side door. So it passed right under the door where I was sitting. Didn't even know about it at the time. Because we're driving through the park and the car's kind of bouncing around. I hear a loud shot, and we figure out, shit, somebody had just shot at us. And of course, when you're chasing people down dark alleys, you're in danger because you don't know if they're going to turn around, if they have a gun. And so those type of things were commonplace. Those were really kind of like everyday activities where you would be, in danger. But being in danger and being in fear can be two different things. I was never really in fear, even though I might have been in danger.
Does that ever make you question your job though, Greg, when your life is in danger every time you put on a uniform?
Well, it can be. I mean, because what are you doing? You're going out and confronting the worst of society's ills oftentimes. And you're also just confronting people, even decent people, that are at their worst. So you go to a domestic violence scene and everybody's emotions are running high, and people think that the world's falling apart on them, and you do desperate things when you're in those positions. So you can get into situations where people that would normally be compliant and cooperative all of a sudden don't, because they're just so amped up over their own desperate situation, whatever it might be. So you never know what you're going to encounter. You put on the uniform, you get in the car, you answer radio calls, and you never know what's around the corner until you get there and try to figure it out. So, yeah, I mean,
I've had a few police officers on the podcast, and people don't realise from the rough areas and the estates we have in the UK, it's you kind of grew up to hate the police, but once you actually listen to people's stories who've put on a uniform, you don't realise the extent they actually go through, that seeing the dead bodies, even car crashes, like having to go at scenes. And I had a man on, and there was a kid cut in half, and they had to just wait until the ambulance was there. But as soon as, obviously, it was the bonnet of the car that was keeping the body together, like some sad stuff. And a lot of people then seem to turn to drinking drugs who are police officers, especially in the UK. Everyone I've had on have had kind of, I believe there's the PTSD plays a big part in a lot of trauma from what they see, because it's not a humane thing to see all that kind of stuff daily. How does it change you as an individual, Greg, to be in such a tough job? Like, do you become cold towards society, your family, or is it just put the uniform on, come home and switch off, or how do you adapt to that?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think, generally speaking, like you hit it on the head, it's an individual thing. It's like, how are you built as an individual? What kind of stresses and pressures can you endure? How do you manage that stress? And, do you turn to the bottle? Do you turn to drugs? Do you turn to being, an isolationist, where it's just like, I don't want to hang out with anybody but cops because they're the only people that understand me? So it depends on that individual and how he decides to process these stresses and these unusual situations. Oftentimes there's guys that just don't take the job too seriously, and that's healthy. You've got to be able to hang your uniform up, go home, and live your life away from police work. But there's other people like myself, for instance, that get consumed by it, and it becomes, it becomes more important in your personal life than it should. You need to have a line, a professional line and a personal line, and some people blur that line, like I did. I was so committed to police work that oftentimes my family took a back seat, and that's not good. That's unhealthy. But at the same time, the best investigators, the guys that really are going to probably accomplish the most, are those guys that are so committed to the job that they're not going to let one stone go unturned. So it's a tough thing. But you do have to be aware of what it's doing to you psychologically and emotionally. And I think law enforcement today recognizes that better than they ever have in the past. There's behavioral sciences that are looking for these flags and type of things. But back in the day, let's say the 60s, 70s, even 80s, it's like, hey, toughen up, handle it, don't play a puss.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people struggle to this day, because as men, we don't really speak about our feelings and emotions. Greg, if you've seen something in the 80s, 90s, like you say, it's toughen up. It's part of the job. Deal with it. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a tough thing in itself. But then again, it's easy now to speak out because we've got social media and everything. It's kind of the in thing as well. Like people just love to speak out, and it's a good thing. But so, see, when you were going through your career, did you know anything about 2pac when you get shot in like 95, 96? Did you know anything about them? Those shootings?
No, I didn't listen to that kind of music. I mean, obviously, you might hear on the news or might be aware of the fact that, these prominent musicians or these prominent artists have gotten killed. But no, I wasn't paying attention to it because I didn't listen to that music. And even at that time, I related that music to the type of street activity that I didn't admire. I mean, when you have, prior to these guys being killed, just think you've got NWA coming out with "Fuck the Police," and there was very much a perception by not only the police department but the general public is that this is antisocial type of music, antisocial behavior, and that's the way that I perceived it. It wasn't until I started working gangs and understanding gangs, and then of course hearing music that was gang related, that I start to appreciate, where's this voice coming from? What are they talking about? What do we need to do to kind of merge the gap that is taking place between the perception of the people on the street and law enforcement and the perception of law enforcement to the people that were on the street? And not that I was, looking to tolerate crime, but understanding oftentimes where is this coming from and trying to understand why do people feel this way, and is there a way to kind of heal these wounds? And so that's kind of always been, obviously today it's still the challenge.
See, when NWA released that song, like "Fuck the Police," did you see a rise in violence towards police, or did it not really matter? Was it just a case of people singing that song when you're driving past, and or was there a rise in violence?
Yeah, do you have? I'm not sure which year that was, but listen, in the late
90.
Okay, early 90s, yeah, because in the late 80s and early 90s, like gang activity was off the hook in Los Angeles. I mean, there were gang-related murders every single night, and I'm not exaggerating, sometimes 2, 3, 5, even 10 across the city. Like there was so much gang violence. So when you correlate, well, what's happening, and then this music that seems to be kind of not, maybe glorifying it is too strong of a word, but tacitly supporting it. It's hard to say, I respect the music when it's emphasizing something that is causing so much damage in the cultures in which the music is being really respected and played and emphasized.
Yeah, do you think that stuff was just putting more fuel to the fire that was already lit between gangs and the police at that stage anyway?
Sure. Yeah. At the time, for sure, I would have thought that, absolutely.
So, 2006, you got the call to work two of the biggest unsolved murders in America, especially in the music industry. Two of the biggest hip hop stars. How does a man of your caliber then get the call for that job who didn't really know much about it?
Well, I'll tell you, there's two parts of it. One is that the Biggie case was being handled out of our robbery homicide division. So this is one of the, it's a downtown unit that handles all the higher profile murders in the city. Back at that time, excuse me, there was 18 different divisions, patrol divisions in Los Angeles. Each of those patrol divisions had their own homicide units. For instance, Biggie got killed in Wilshire Division. So originally, Biggie's murder was being handled by the Wilshire homicide detectives. But once it looked like it was going to be a more challenging case to solve and take more resources, it went down to the headquarters homicide unit called Robbery Homicide Division. So they had been working on it for, as we mentioned, 9 years at that point. And then there's this lawsuit against the city claiming that cops were involved. So the people down at Robbery Homicide Division were like, hey, we need to put fresh eyes on this. We need to take a new approach to this. So the department looked to recruit people that had expertise in the areas that they presumed were relevant to the murder. Gangs, obviously cold case homicide, potentially narcotics, large organized complicated cases. And I had been working those type of cases for years. So my name came across the table, and the people at Robbery Homicide Division are like, "Hey, Greg, are you interested in working this case?" Along with other people, of course. And I said, "Hell yeah, of course, I would love to. Let's see if we can figure it out."
So where do you start then from that case, like a few years before? To, I'd imagine there'll be thousands and thousands of files and paperwork. And where do you start then when you get a case like that?
Starting with what has already been done, you've got to go back and familiarize yourself with the case itself. You got to go back to the crime scene, back to all the things that led up to the murder. If you think that there was some kind of premeditation, or you've got to think what kind of conflicts were going on that might have been a motive for this murder. You've got to go and educate yourself on everything that is already known to previous investigators. And so, as you said, there's just thousands and thousands of pages of material that you have to review. You've got to figure out what has been done, what hasn't been done, what's your new strategy that's going to, hopefully succeed where it hasn't in the past. So it's a tremendous amount of work. And so my idea, or our idea, I should say, was to let's get subject matter experts in every field. So, well, we know these are firearm related crimes. Let's get somebody who is an expert in firearms, the gang related crimes. Let's get people that were experts in gangs, not only gangs in general, but gangs specifically. That's why we brought Tim Brennan in from Compton, because he had been working gangs in Compton. We knew that Southside Crips were related. Suge Knight was affiliated with the mob Piru. So we got people so we brought in all these subject matter experts to build a team. And that was the initial investigative strategy, was to build a team.
So we'll start off with 2pac, like the connection in 1995 when 2pac was shot 5 times in New York. Was this the start of it all between Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records? Or was it on before this?
Well, yeah, no, there was no beef at that point between Death Row and Bad Boy, because 2pac wasn't even with Death Row at that point in time. When he was shot in New York, or when he got beat, I should say, in New York in 1994 or 95, he wasn't even assigned to Death Row at that point in time. So there was no beef going on between them at the time, between the record labels.
What about P. Diddy and Suge Knight? Was P. Diddy's entourage, did one of P. Diddy's entourage not kill one of Suge Knight's entourage or bodyguard?
That was after the incident in New York. So the shooting between Suge Knight's bodyguard and P. Diddy's buddy, that was in 95, I think, in Atlanta. And that was after the thing that happened in New York with 2pac. And so, and even at that time, 2pac was still not assigned to Death Row.
Do you think that plays an effect in it though? Because Suge Knight never let that lie, because he was always putting it on P. Diddy, was he not?
Absolutely. Yeah. That was definitely the first time where the conflict resulted in physical violence. So once, now you've got somebody who's dead as a result of of the beef that they were having, and everything kind of just began to get more and more serious following that.
Why did 2pac think Biggie and P. Diddy got him shot? What is the real reason behind that? Do you think Suge Knight could have been possibly in his head because he didn't like P. Diddy anyway?
No, again, remember in 94 when 2pac was shot, he had no association with Death Row. He didn't have any association with
After
Suge.
it though, did Suge not get him bailed out? Or did 2pac automatically think it was P. Diddy and Biggie that tried to get him killed?
Well, yeah. So at the Quad studio, 2pac suspected that the guys at Bad Boy had something to do with it. So that was his initial, perception. But in time, he began to realize that those guys probably weren't involved. But he suspected that maybe that they knew something and they weren't telling him. Not that they set it up, but that they were aware of who did it and then weren't telling him who did it. So it went from first Tupac thinking these guys had something to do with it. And then it was, okay, maybe they didn't have anything to do with it, but they knew about who did it and they didn't tell me. So that's how it kind of began to evolve. And then initially, Tupac figured out who it was, that it was Jimmy Rosemond and, a New York guy that was behind it.
So was he just there to get robbed, Tupac? Or was
No,
he
it
there
was
to get killed?
Yeah, no, it was to discipline him. They didn't go there to kill him, obviously, because they could have just killed him if that had been their intention. They beat him to discipline him because he was running his mouth about getting paid and kind of being demanding. And I think this guy, Jimmy Rosemond, was just like, okay, listen, you got to understand, you don't dictate how things happen out here. I dictate how things happen out here. And are you going to raise your voice that, I'm going to have to send you a message.
But 5 shots, man, that's more than a message.
Well, first of all, that's highly, highly disputed. There's most of the evidence. First of all, he was not shot in the head. Most people believe that. He was pistol whipped. He suffered some severe lacerations. Had he been shot in the head at point blank range, there would never have been a Tupac death row. He'd have been dead right then and there. He was pistol whipped over the head. When he tried to pull his own pistol out of his waistband in the heat of the moment, he's trying to pull his own pistol out and he shoots himself, and that bullet goes through his leg, through his groin, and back in, so he shoots himself. And then, of course, his hand is lacerated because as he's grabbing the gun, he doesn't have a proper grip on it, which is one of the reasons why it accidentally discharged. And the slide came back and sliced his finger in the web of his thumb here. So the idea that he was shot 5 times, that's just urban legend.
Oh, so that's a myth then? Like, I always believed that as well, 5 times and he survived. All the songs, everything that you read, that's the one that sticks out as well. I can't believe that, mate. I fucking believe that as well.
Well,
it's mad.
Listen, if you're going to write a song about what happened, you're going to want to make yourself look as badass as you can. So why not just say, hey,
exaggerate it a bit.
You're not going to write a song saying, hey, I was getting my ass kicked and I shot myself in the balls. You're not going to say that.
How long after the shooting was Tupac sent to prison? Because when he was in prison, that's when Suge Knight approached him to pay for his bail, 1.4 million, if he gives him 3 albums. Like, how long after the shooting was he sent to prison?
Well, it's a considerable amount of time, because remember, the day after he got shot, here I am saying it, the day after that he was beaten, he has to go to court to face these rape and sexual assault charges. And so he went to jail shortly thereafter. And then he was convicted, and then he went to, he was going to prison. And so he's languishing away in jail and probably looking back and being pissed off at everybody that he thought was abandoning him, including Biggie. And that's when, now Tupac at that time was under Interscope with Jimmy Iovine. Well, Death Row with Jimmy. So Jimmy was like, hey, I got an idea. Let's see if we can go rescue Tupac and assign him to Death Row and, make music. And so Suge's like, that's a great idea. I'd be happy to have him. So they went out there and they made a deal to get him out of jail and bring him to the West Coast.
Do you think that was the start of Tupac's demise, teaming up with, because out of everyone, it looked as if Suge Knight was a proper gangster. Like, he looked like a one who didn't really fuck around. Like, do you think Tupac obviously wanted a bit of protection as well before, when he obviously got beat up in New York? Or what do you think his method of thinking was, teaming up with Suge Knight? Obviously to get the bail money. But sorry, I'm going off track here, but why did Tupac not have his own money to bail himself out? Was he skint?
No, he didn't have his own money to bail himself out. And he didn't have a lawyer that was working on his behalf. Now, here comes David Kenner, a very successful criminal defense lawyer, and bringing the money that Tupac didn't have himself. And so that combination of a good lawyer, a crafty lawyer, and a bunch of money is all needed, is all Tupac needed. And so he makes a deal with the devil, so to speak. I'll do 3 albums for Death Row, and you guys paved the way for me to get out of here, because obviously, more than anything, Tupac wants to get the hell out of prison. And so that's where that union started. But Tupac's demise started when he began to identify himself. Well, I shouldn't say identify himself, but when Tupac began to affiliate himself with the gang activity that was surrounding Death Row, getting involved in assaults and starting to, just be very disrespectful towards his enemies, and, and then beginning to find himself ingratiated with gang members. And so when he began to align himself with these people, that was when the beginning of his demise. Yeah. So for instance, in Las Vegas, Tupac had no business running over and assaulting Orlando Anderson. That was not Tupac's business. That was gang shit that Tupac shouldn't have had anything to do with. And so when he decided to take it upon himself to go and act like he was, representing this gang, that's when he made a fatal mistake.
What's the rumour? How true is the rumour that P. Diddy was paying people money to take the chains, the death row chains?
That's rumor. It's never been substantiated. So there's certainly the people at death row and the people within the mob Pyru, they believed it to be true. And so they behaved as if it was true because they believed it to be true. Whether it was true or not, that's never been proven. We don't have any firsthand, that I'm aware of, any firsthand evidence that Diddy was actually making these offers of paying for a death row chain. I don't know if that's true or not.
P. Diddy comes across as a professional entrepreneur, just all business. On the films and documentaries, it looked as if he was trying to sort things out. Do you think Suge Knight plays a part in that by saying he was paying people to take the chains so any one of the Bloods could then put it on him in sight?
No, I don't think so. I just think it was a rumor that started. Again, we don't know exactly where that rumor started, but Suge Knight was going to exacerbate any problem. That's just the nature of Suge Knight. If there's a problem, it's probably going to get worse if it has anything to do with Suge. But these are kids. Diddy was young. He's a young man. It's not the Diddy of 2022. It's the Diddy of 1994, 95, and 96. And so, these were young people who oftentimes are caught up in the moment, making emotional decisions, and then paying suffering the consequences of them. So they're just, I think Diddy learned a lot through his own mistakes.
What was the real charges of Tupac when he got sent to prison for the rape allegations and sexual assault? You see videos, he says he never done anything. It was a touch of the buttocks or something. Like, what is the true charges that he got sent to prison for?
It was for him. It was reduced to sexual assault, and so it was reduced from like forcible rape to sexual assault. Nonetheless, he was convicted. It was still a felony, and was going to do, was looking at significant prison time. But yeah, the charges were reduced from forcible rape into sexual assault.
How, when you started reading up on like Suge Knight and stuff, how were you wary of him and what he was capable of?
No, I mean, I wasn't. I didn't live in fear of the people we investigated. You're not going to be a very effective investigator if you're running around in fear of the people that you're investigating. You have to approach it fearlessly and be willing to confront that world. I was never afraid of Suge, in the sense that I, had to lock my doors or carry a gun or anything like that. But you did recognize the legitimacy of the nature of that beast. But no, I was never in fear of anybody that I investigated.
So the night in Las Vegas, Suge, his entourage, Tupac, were at the Mike Tyson fight. Mike Tyson won. They're going through the lobby. So why did they attack Orlando Anderson?
They attacked Orlando Anderson because there had been a prior confrontation between the guy that was with Tupac that night in Las Vegas, a guy named Trayvon Lane, and other members of the mob Pyru had been at a mall in outside of Los Angeles, and they ran into Orlando Anderson and some of Orlando Anderson's Crip friends. They all got into a fight, and allegedly the death row medallion that Trayvon Lane was wearing was stolen, or it was stolen and then recovered immediately during the fight. We're not sure which is the truth. I'm not sure which is the truth. However, there was this conflict. And that night in Las Vegas, when Trayvon Lane looks across the lobby of the casino, he sees the same guy that had tried to steal his medallion. And he tells Tupac, there's that motherfucker right there that tried to steal my medallion. And then Tupac just took it upon himself to go over there and involve himself in somebody else's business.
So they leave. What happens? What's the steps of events then that lead up to Tupac's death after they leave the casino?
They leave the casino. They already knew that they were all going to go to Suge Knight's nightclub out in Las Vegas called the 662. Mike Tyson was supposed to make an appearance there. Tupac was going to perform and do some songs there. So it's going to be an after party. And meanwhile, the Crips are all kind of looking at Orlando Anderson like, man, we can't just let this go. You just got your ass kicked in front of a lot of people by a whole, by all of Suge Knight's entourage. So they start putting the wheels into motion to go and retaliate. They know where Tupac's going to be. They know where Suge's going to be. They go and approach a guy who was affiliated with Bad Boy, at least a guy that was affiliated with Puffy. And they say, hey, we have a beef now. This guy offers to give them a gun. He gives Keefe D, which was Orlando Anderson's uncle, a gun. They get into a car and then they set off to find Tupac and Suge.
So obviously there's a lot of conspiracy theories around Tupac's murder. LAPD done it. Like, he done it himself because of the words that are in his songs. Like, there's so much bullshit around this case that it is intriguing as well. Like, nearly 30 years later, we're still talking about it because it is still high profile. Nobody's ever had a conviction. Like, what was your, see before, when you started working on the case between 96 and 98, because Orlando Anderson was never convicted, was there much evidence against him then? Well, there was circumstantial evidence against him then. We knew that he was the person with the motive. He had just gotten assaulted by Tupac, and so there was always the obvious motive that, hey, this is probably the guy that came back and retaliated. But keep in mind, this happened in Las Vegas, not Los Angeles. And so there was never a conspiracy that LAPD was involved in Tupac's murder, because that doesn't make any sense. The LAPD had no connection to that. He was killed in Las Vegas. So the really two prominent theories was that Suge Knight either had it done because he believed that Tupac was about ready to leave death row. And he figured, well, he's worth more to me dead than alive if he's going to leave. That was one of the early theories. It didn't really make any sense on the face of it, because surely Suge Knight's not going to hire guys to drive up and shoot directly at him, hoping to hit Tupac instead. So that theory is really always kind of weak. The more likely theory was that these Crips that had just been involved in a fight with Tupac came back and retaliated. And we now know that is exactly what happened after we got the confession of Keefe D. But there was circumstantial evidence. There was reports of a white Cadillac being used. There was an association with these Southside Crips in a white Cadillac. We had the videotaped beating of Orlando Anderson that occurred when Tupac assaulted him. So there was that type of evidence, but we had no really strong eyewitness evidence pointing the finger directly at Orlando. And that's why Las Vegas law enforcement were unable to really make any real progress with it. Nobody was cooperating.
everybody wanted to handle it on the streets. And I don't know how this is over in the UK, but in the street culture, in the gang culture in the United States, they have a code that you just don't cooperate with law enforcement. We'll try to figure this out on our own, and we'll handle it on our own. And so that's why both of these cases essentially weren't solved, because the people that were in a position to know things weren't able to, or were unwilling to help.
Did Suge Knight get shot in the head as well, or is that another myth?
No, it's kind of a myth. A piece of shrapnel or a fragment of a bullet went under the skin in the back of his neck. It wasn't like a bullet directly entered his head and was lodged there. It was a piece of metal from a shrapnel. Whether that shrapnel was from the door, whether it was a piece of the bullet that had fragmented off, I'm not sure. But Suge claims that the metal is still, in his head. I don't know what the truth of that is, but I'm very confident that he didn't take a bullet in the head.
So when 2pac gets killed in 1996, was the police expecting an uproar and a retaliation from 2pac's side and Suge Knight, or did everything kind of calm down a bit?
Well, the police in Las Vegas they're still trying to figure things out in the days ensuing after Tupac's shooting. Tupac's alive in the hospital. They're trying to figure out who shot this guy, and it's not a murder yet. It's just an attempted murder. And but before they're even able to kind of wrap their head around what's taking place with these crews and with these conflicts, the war's already started in Compton. The Crips and Bloods have already decided to take this to the next level back on the streets of Compton, and that's where a bunch of shootings are taking place now as a result of Tupac's shooting. The kind of a little war between these two factions was completely underway.
I watched an interview with Napoleon, and he says that it was 2pac's mum who switched off the life support machine. Is that correct?
Yes. She decided that, Tupac listen, even if he survived, Tupac's career was over insofar as his rapping. They had to remove one of his lungs, and in order to keep him alive. Tupac was never going to be the same person, even if he had survived that assault. Unless he figured out how to rap with one lung. But practically speaking, his rap career was over. And so, but Tupac was a strong guy. He was very creative. What he would have done with himself is anybody's guess. I'm confident he would have become successful in some area, but I just don't know if it would have been, singing. His mom saw that he was just circling the drain. They had to do intercardiac massages 3 times, cracked his chest open, removed a lung. They had to sit there and massage his heart in order to keep it beating. And they were just keeping him alive synthetically. And so his mom realized, this is no life. This is no way. My son won't want to live like this. This is what I believe went through her head. And she says, I don't want to have a son that lives his life on life support. So she decided not to resuscitate him after his heart stopped again.
How was Snoop Dogg when he showed up at the hospital? Was he welcomed? Because I know him and 2pac fell out beforehand, did they not?
When he showed up at the hospital?
Yeah, when 2pac got shot. But
I think everybody was so focused on Tupac and his recovery and figuring out what happened. I think they were kind of setting the beef aside. I don't know if that beef between Snoop and Tupac was ever that big of a thing. They might have had disagreements or whatever, but it wasn't the kind of beef that was going to result in some type of internal violence at Death Row Records. So no, I think Snoop was just there to offer his support, and everybody was leaning on each other, hoping that Tupac was going to recover. So
once Tupac dies, Suge Knight is then recalled to prison for 9 years. But did Suge Knight not get in contact with Orlando Anderson to go to court for him, to then give evidence against him and say that Suge Knight never done anything to stop him from going to prison? Did Suge Knight not offer money, like 50 grand, to Orlando Anderson to be a witness for him?
Yes. And so now, after the assault on Orlando Anderson, which involved Suge Knight, he's seen clearly on the video camera assaulting. Now, Suge Knight was on probation, and so he was getting his probation violated. So as that issue is unfolding, Tupac's dead. Tupac dies 6 days after being shot. Suge Knight is now trying to stay out of jail himself. He's just lost his number one artist. He's, struggling to keep death row above water because of all of the drama that surrounded it. His gang's at war in Compton, and he's trying to stay out of jail. So he says, listen, the primary witness against me, Orlando Anderson, can also be my savior if I can get him to take the stand and retract his statement. So he offers Orlando Anderson money. Orlando Anderson accepts it. Orlando Anderson goes on the stand and denies that Suge Knight assaulted him, even though everybody can see as clear as day right there on the video that Suge Knight is in fact kicking him. So the judge says, hey, Orlando Anderson, you're full of shit. And he violates Suge's probation. So yeah, it's just Orlando. It just kind of shows you the nature of Orlando Anderson. He's willing to sit there and murder Tupac, and then completely turn around and testify on behalf of his enemy, which is Suge Knight. So, this is just some street shit that shouldn't surprise anybody if you know the nature of these people that live and die, within these gang cultures.
Yeah, that's so messy. Like, for the man who's killed Tupac, but then Suge Knight to be in contact for him to stand at court. And I can understand he doesn't want to go to prison. Did that ever raise question marks that Suge Knight could have possibly paid Orlando Anderson to kill Tupac?
There was some speculation on that, but it didn't carry much weight. If Suge wanted Tupac shot, he had his own guys that could do that. He didn't have to go to some rival gang. It makes no sense for him to go and say, well, listen, I hate you guys. I know you're our enemies. We're at war with you. Hey, do me a favor. Come kill my number one guy. It just makes no sense on the face of it. He had his, if that's what he wanted to do, he would have asked his own people to go and take care of that.
So when Tupac passes away, is it true that Biggie was brokenhearted, crying, and really upset that he was dead?
Evidently, that's the story, and I believe it to be true. I think Biggie was kind of an unwitting pawn in all of this, and although Biggie did some things that kind of exacerbated the problem, I don't think Biggie ever wanted to see any harm to anybody. And just recently, Little Cease did an interview, and he's describing what Biggie's emotional state was after Tupac was killed, and he said that Biggie was just absolutely brokenhearted, that Biggie was truly, in mourning over what had happened to Tupac.
Obviously, P. Diddy kind of goes under the radar, but was he ever involved in anything? Was he maybe a mastermind behind some certain things, or was he just try to keep everybody at peace? Because did he not reach out to Islam to try and squash the beef between P. Diddy and Suge Knight as well?
Yeah, that's the story, that P. Diddy, he kind of wanted to squash the beef. He wanted to make music. He wanted to produce music. He wanted to make money. He wanted to, broaden the horizons at Bad Boy Records. So yeah, that's the story, is that he wanted to squash it. Suge wasn't interested in squashing it. And so it just continued to fester and lead to more and more conflict. But I think that Puffy's primary objective was to avoid all of this to the best that he could and just make music. And then on top of this, you've got these young guys and they've got egos, and Suge Knight's trying to open up Death Row East in New York, which is Puffy's backyard. Puffy wants Bad Boy West in Los Angeles, which is Suge's backyard. And so now they're encroaching on each other's territories. There's, shootings taking place between their crews, and it just got out of control. And they were too young and dumb to figure out how to avoid the inevitable, which is the murder of Tupac and Biggie.
So the Tupac has just been murdered. The case is still ongoing. 6 months later, Biggie is murdered. Does that then drill fear into the police expecting another retaliation? Like, because it's still unsolved in Vegas 6 months later? Was Biggie ever warned that his life was in danger, or was it unexpected, or what was the full scenario? Why it happened to Biggie first of all?
Well, obviously after Tupac is shot, the conflict takes it place. This conflict takes place back on the streets of Compton, and there's a war going on. Suge Knight obviously now has lost not only his bodyguard Jake Robles after the shooting in Atlanta, now he's lost Tupac in Las Vegas, and for all intent and purposes, they're kind of losing the war, and so he knows that he has to answer for the murder of Tupac. And so he sets things in motion in order to have Biggie killed. Now, keep in mind, after Tupac was shot in Las Vegas, a rumor started. And, very much like the rumor of these chains. Hey, listen, I'll give you $10,000. Puffy's offering $10,000 if you get a death row chain. Well, that rumor becomes reality on the streets. And it's just like after Tupac is shot in Vegas, rumor starts that Biggie had been in Vegas, that Biggie had hired the Southside Crips, that Biggie had provided the gun to kill Tupac. And so that rumor becomes reality. And so now Biggie gets targeted because of this bad information that the streets accept as true information. And so that's how Biggie got himself in the middle of it. And Bad Boy Records had a false sense of security coming back to Los Angeles so soon because A, Tupac's gone, B, Suge Knight's in jail. And so they figure, hey, the streets are clear, the beef is over, and they come here with a false sense of security, and they made that fatal mistake.
When was the Soul Train Awards? Was that before Tupac's death or after? When Suge Knight was on the stage giving it West Side, and
that was before Tupac was murdered.
Yeah, so that fueled a lot of things as well, because that's when things went kind of all over the newspapers. That he
you've got Suge Knight publicly disrespecting Biggie. Suge Knight publicly disrespecting Puffy and Bad Boy in New York. And so again, this is just young guys with big egos, kicking and screaming at each other, and it just spiraled out of control.
Where does Kevin Gaines and Frank Liga come into this? Two police officers. Did one of them not get killed? Was Kevin Lanes not having an affair with one of Suge Knight's girlfriends?
Well, I don't know if you'd call it an affair. They were having a relationship. She was estranged. This is Sharitha Knight. She was estranged from Suge. They weren't really dating, even though she was still involved in some death row activities as an administrator, so to speak. She was still kind of managing Snoop. And so she starts dating this cop named Kevin Gaines, and they have a relationship going on. Well, aside from everything, because, Kevin Gaines had nothing to do with death row. He had nothing to do with death row security. He had nothing to do with anything other than he's dating Sharitha Knight. Well, he gets into a road rage incident with another off-duty cop named Frank Liga, and they pull guns on each other. Frank pulls his trigger first and kills Kevin Gaines. So that's an isolated incident of road rage between two off-duty LAPD officers. And, Frank Liga was actually on duty, but he was undercover. And so that it's an isolated incident, but people try to connect that somehow to death row records or connect it somehow to these murders. And it's just a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, so it's irrelevant to was the case?
It had nothing to do with anything. That shooting was an isolated incident between two guys that just bumped into each other on the street. Neither of them knew the other one was a cop. And one thing led to another, and one of them ended up dead.
So when Biggie gets murdered, then what's the procedure after that? Like, why has it took so long for two high-profile names killed on the streets to then unsolved? Does that put a lot of pressure then on police department to then try and get answers?
Yeah, obviously you're always trying to figure out what happened. That's your goal as a homicide investigator, is to try to figure out what happened. But when people aren't cooperating, or you're not getting the information that you need in order to solve the case, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. You can't force people to talk. You can't put them into a room and waterboard them. And, so if people don't cooperate, it's going to be very difficult to solve a case. And when you're dealing with gangs and the gang culture, they don't cooperate for all intent and purpose. And so there's, the majority of gang crimes in Los Angeles go unsolved for that reason. These just happen to be a couple of high profile guys whose names are brought, are demand a lot of public attention, but it's just gang nonsense. And it's oftentimes the case that you don't solve gang crimes.
Do you think if 2pac and Biggie were still living longer, do you think gang violence would have got worse? Because then it's divided. It's not just divided a few gangs, like a few people in the gang. You're talking thousands and thousands. Do you think violence would have erupted more if those two were still alive?
No, I mean, obviously it got worse because they were dead. I mean, there would never have been a war between the mob Pyrus and the Southside Crips if 2pac had not been shot and killed. So their deaths actually made it worse. The gang violence, the localized gang violence between the gangs that were affiliated with those two record labels, it got worse. Now, had they survived, then who's to say what would have happened? Maybe they figure out a way to squash the beef. Maybe they figure out a way to work things out. Who knows? It's really difficult to try to speculate what would have happened if they survived.
So the 2pac murder you've solved, but how did you solve that? Was Keefe D? How does he come into play? Was he not up for getting sent for a life sentence, but you made him a deal? Is that correct?
Yeah, we made a deal with Keefe D. He confessed to his role in the murder of 2pac. He said he was in Las Vegas. He's the one that got the gun. He's the one that was in the car with his nephew. He's the one that handed the gun to his nephew, and the nephew leaned out the window and shot 2pac. So that's all pretty much cut and clear. That's the generally accepted explanation for 2pac's murder. But with Keefe D, we had made a deal with him that if he told us the truth about that we would take consideration into all the drug charges that he was facing. And so that's what happened. He made a deal and told us the story of what happened, confessed to it. But within that deal, in American law enforcement, we have what's known as a proffer agreement. And this is where a potential defendant, can agree to cooperate with the authorities under the understanding that you can't use what he's saying against him. You can use what he's saying against others. If other people provide you evidence against that person, you can use that, but you can't use his self-incriminating statements. It's part of our kind of like a Fifth Amendment type of protection. So that's the agreement. We're like, hey, Keefe D, we really want to know what happened. If you tell us what happened, whatever you tell us won't be used against you. That was how that went. But then he goes out, starts to publicly talk about his involvement. He writes a book. He does interviews. None of that information is protected and can be used against him and should be used against him. But thus far, Las Vegas just doesn't feel like they can successfully prosecute a case where the defendant is also the only witness against the same defendant, which is himself. It's very complicated.
Yeah, did he ever go to prison, Keefe D?
He's been to prison several times.
Yeah, did he go after they made the deal though, or to get his sentence cut down, or was the deal, tell us what you know and you'll not go to prison?
No, that wasn't the deal. The deal was that just cooperate us and we'll take into consideration these charges against you. Ultimately, the United States Attorney's Office never filed the drug charges against him. However, Keefe D did go to jail, I think a couple of years after this confession. He ended up getting caught with a gun and some, I think at the time, marijuana, when marijuana was still illegal. And he did a short prison term as a result of that. But he's never went to jail for the drug charges that we brought him in on in order to gain his cooperation.
How accurate do you believe his story, Keefe D?
I believe the story he told us was 100% accurate.
And so when you think then you've solved the case, which has been going on for many years, what year was this, Greg?
So that would have been late 2008, early 2009. Yeah. And so again, what he was telling us was just the obvious. Like, it was always obvious that Orlando Anderson was the likely assailant against 2pac. So when Keefe tells us this, it's not a big revelation. It's just like, okay, yeah, well, obviously that's the story. But now we had an eyewitness and co-conspirator actually telling us what the story was.
So now we're going to Biggie's murder case, where was it Suge Knight who paid? Is it Poochie?
Poochie,
Is that
yeah.
correct? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what's Suge Knight's association to Poochie? Who is Poochie? Is he a trigger man?
Yeah, Poochie was a known trigger man. He was a gang member. Used to hang out with Suge to some degree. He was a person that a lot of people understood to be a shooter. He had been involved in other shootings. He is wanted in other murders, and he definitely fit the profile of somebody who would have done this type of thing for Suge Knight. So then we get another co-conspirator who was involved in the deal to have Biggie murdered, and that was Suge Knight's girlfriend. And she tells us, listen, Suge asked me to hire Poochie to kill Biggie in retaliation for the murder of 2pac. I went and I met with Poochie. Poochie agreed to do it. There was an agreement over money, and that set everything in motion. So there's three people. You got Suge Knight, Poochie, and the girlfriend, and the three of them conspire to kill Biggie. So they wait. Everybody knew where Biggie was. He's in Los Angeles. He's showing up around town, and the information about him going to the Peterson Auto Museum the night he shot becomes common knowledge. So Poochie goes there, and whether there may have been another co-conspirator, we just don't know if Poochie was operating alone or not that night. And the next thing you know, Biggie's getting shot.
How hard is that for you, Greg, that Orlando Anderson is dead, Poochie's dead? Like, do you think you'll ever really get any closure towards 2pac and Biggie case? A conviction even?
Well, I have closure. I mean, I'm completely convinced that these two guys were responsible for the murders. And if you look at justice through an eye for an eye, then perfect justice prevailed. They were both killed in the same way that they killed 2pac and Biggie. They were both shot down in the streets. So, that's closure for me. But whether the public ever gets closure, that's a different question. There's never going to be a judicial there's never going to be a judicial reckoning where people go to court ever. It's 25 years later. Almost everybody's dead. And so they're never going to get closure if they're waiting to see somebody get convicted.
Did you ever reach out to Suge Knight and have a discussion with him or a chat? Do you think he would ever speak to you?
No, Suge Knight's not ever going to sit down and tell the truth to law enforcement. You got to understand who Suge Knight is and the nature of Suge Knight. I mean, Suge Knight is about Suge Knight, and Suge Knight's about Suge Knight only. He doesn't give a shit about justice. He doesn't give a shit about honoring 2pac's memory by helping the police solve that. He doesn't give a shit about, Biggie Smalls. Suge Knight's never going to, quote unquote, do the right thing, because Suge Knight's not that kind of person. Suge Knight's a bad person whose intention is to do everything he can for himself, even at the expense of others.
So Suge Knight, he seemed to have got away with a lot of things. Do you think he had paid police officers working for him?
Well, yeah, but not that got him out of trouble. I mean, Suge Knight got out of trouble because he had really good lawyers. That's really what kept Suge Knight above water for a long time. But then, ultimately Suge Knight's karma, so to speak, caught up with him, and he's on video running a guy over on a conflict that he helped to exacerbate. He created an issue, and that issue led to a confrontation. That confrontation led to him running somebody over. He ran two people over, actually, but he killed one. And so Suge Knight's past caught up with him, and he should be in prison, and he should be in prison for the rest of his life. if you think about all the things that he did. But regarding the officers that he was affiliated with, he wasn't really affiliated with cops. His head of security, who was an ex-cop, hired cops to work security at death row. And so you had cops that were moonlighting, but Suge's real security was his gang members. The cops were just there as kind of exterior security, visual security. But when things had to get handled, he didn't use the cops to do it. He used his gang members to do it. You know, Suge Knight didn't, you know, it's not like Suge Knight trusted cops to be his confidants and to do his dirty work. He didn't need them, nor would he have trusted him to do that. You have Reggie Wright Jr., who has the security company. And of course, who's he going to hire? He's going to hire his buddies and the people that he knows from law enforcement who can carry guns legally as part of the protective wing of Death Row Records. The gang members can't carry guns legally.
Why did Suge Knight say he injected Eazy-E with AIDS? How is that another myth or is that just rumors?
I think it's ridiculous on the face of it. I mean, come on. Of course, that rumor is out there, that myth is out there. People believe it, but I mean, let's get reasonable. Suge Knight's going to go inject him with AIDS. Come on,
Greg. I'm not going to fucking bullshit you, brother. I believed all that.
Oh, Jesus.
I know, mate. Like, we're only in the UK watching it and seeing the documentaries and watching all the stuff. And like, why would you go on live TV and see that? Like, humans, as a human, you think it's a bit far-fetched, but it's always question marks in it. That's why this ain't just about Biggie and 2pac. There's like so many different people connected from this. It's so messy, but it's still so intriguing. Like, I still listen to 2pac music to this day.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
You know, when you're on the outside looking in, you can, a lot of this can kind of lead you to believe that all these fantastic things happen and all of these sophisticated type of, you know, organized crime. You know, it's not that way, man. These are just gangsters acting like gangsters and getting away with a lot because of the gang world that they live in that protects itself. Some of this stuff just gets really insanely strange. That's all I can say about it. I mean, all of this is really pretty simple. None of these guys are rocket scientists, which is why most of them are either dead or in jail. And you know, it's just the culture of that time. But no, and you know, and going and getting a syringe full of AIDS and sneaking up and freaking easy with it. It's like, come on, that's not the way this shit works.
Yeah, but it's a conspiracy theory mindset as well, where you're thinking, did he not beat Eazy-E up though to sign a contract, and then because the AIDS came so quick that people were saying it's because it was injected into his system so quick? So in my mind, I'm thinking, shit, that stuff, that America's nuts. Like, it's crazy here in the UK, Greg, but America's a different fucking level, man. These are psychopaths over there.
Well, we have our share of psychopaths. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I mean, you can, this is what happens with conspiratorial thinking, is that you just like, oh, here's this and here's this. And well, they must have something to do with each other. So let's connect them and then develop a theory where this has something to do with this. But it's often not the case. These are just, you know, there's coincidences that happen. There's, you know, you can connect, you can put dots on a piece of paper and draw and connect those and make 1,000 different pictures, you know, depending on how you want to connect the dots. And this is the problem with conspiratorial thinking, is that they see a bunch of dots, they try to figure out how to force fit them to work together to draw a picture that they've already formed in their mind. And that's just not how investigations work. That's not how truth works. And so, you know, we have to deal with facts and evidence. And when things don't fit, then you set them aside.
Yeah. P. Diddy, did he not come out and call you a liar for something?
I don't know if it was that strong. I mean, obviously, P. Diddy's going to, you know, P. Diddy's not going to step up and say, hey, okay, listen, all this shit's true. Of course, he's not going to do that. Who would in his position, you know? So yeah, I think that P. Diddy is, if P. Diddy really thought I was a liar, it would have been very easy for him to have his attorney go down to the courthouse and file a defamation lawsuit against me. I think P. Diddy knows that what I'm saying is true. I also add the caveat that I think P. Diddy was in over his head. He was caught up in a situation that he couldn't control. He made some bad decisions. But I don't think P. Diddy was out there trying to get anybody hurt. I don't think he was out there trying to get anybody murdered. I don't think he understood exactly the nature of the beast that he was dealing with. And when he's dealing with these gang members, he doesn't fully aware of what they, A, are capable of, A, or B, willing to do by way of just a casual conversation. So if he's telling these guys like, shit, I'm up to my neck with Suge Knight and 2pac, and, you know, they're trying to hunt me down and I'm scared and I don't know what to do. And I wish somebody would take care of these. And will you guys take care of this for me? I'll do whatever you need. Just, you know, that kind of desperate talking, not actually believing or wanting or intending that these things would be carried out. I don't think that P. Diddy wanted 2pac murdered in any way, shape, or form, but he's dealing with people who are willing to do that type of thing. And then when one of them gets assaulted, they're like, hey, you know what? Diddy kind of wants this done. We're going to do it anyways because we just had our guy get his ass kicked. So we have to retaliate. If there's an added benefit of, you know, helping Puffy out, then that's all that happened.
How long did you stay on the case for, Greg?
A little over just 3 years, 2006 to 2009.
Was that your biggest case? Unsolved?
No, actually not. I worked another case that was even more complicated, another high-profile case, and not me, but a team of people. And it was a much longer case. It's a case that had been investigated years and years and years and years. So, no, but it was the most notable case as far as notoriety. The Biggie and 2pac cases were the most popular as far as the public perception.
Yeah, because you wrote the book, is it Murder Rap?
Yeah. Murder Back.
Mm-hmm. And they turned that into films and documentaries, the 10-part series on Netflix.
Correct.
It's amazing though that it's amazing footage as well. It is so intriguing that, like I've said, like people are still so intrigued by it because there isn't any conviction. Like, can you still understand that as well? Like, you might have all the answers, but for people looking at the outside, there's still so many conspiracies out there. Like 2pac's living in Cuba and like all the telltale signs where the Machiavelli, like he comes back from the dead, and it is very appealing. Can you still understand that though, or are you just going straight detective and no, let's shut up, let's just pure bullshit?
Well, I can do both. I mean, I realize that there's, you know, a lot of people out there that are, you know, attaching themselves to conspiracy theories. And there's people that are out there thinking 2pac's alive. There's people that are out there thinking that Suge killed 2pac. There's people that are out there thinking the government killed 2pac. There's people that are out there thinking the police killed Biggie. So, you know, there's all of these different points of view. I know what I know and I believe what I believe. And so I'm settled with that. And I speak about that, you know, whenever I'm asked to. But I'm completely at peace with the whole thing. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances. I'm glad Orlando and Poochie were held accountable, at least in a divine way. You know, that they've suffered the consequences of their actions, and so I'm cool with it. But if people want to attach themselves and have never-ending conspiracy theories that are constantly changing and modifying 25 years later, you know, you can't control that. You got to let people be who they're going to be and believe what they want to believe and accept that they're never going to convince everybody of the truth. Did
you ever speak to 2pac's mum or Biggie's mum when you were investigating the case?
Yeah, I spoke with Biggie's mom several times. And
she seems a nice woman.
She's beautiful. She's a wonderful woman. She's really kind of the last standing victim in all of this.
Yeah, it must be tough though, that you see the video of Biggie's funeral and everybody out in the street and playing his music. Like, you're forgetting the victims, even though people are still so intrigued. You're forgetting about the mums and the family members and friends who were so close to these individuals. Like it's such a big case. Like, such big cases. Like, what was the the Rampart scandal as well, Greg, like the 400 million. What was that? How was that involved in these cases?
The Rampart scandal had nothing to do with this. It was an independent thing. It had to do with some guys like that were out there putting themselves above the law, cops that were dirty. The Rampart scandal was this umbrella idea that there was this whole group of people. Well, once the smoke cleared, it came down to really just a couple of people that were bad apples. And they were exposed and they were sent to prison and held accountable and lost their jobs. And so the Rampart scandal is an independent, isolated, somewhat event in the history of the LAPD. The $400 million thing, that came up in Biggie's case. That had nothing to do with the Rampart scandal. That was just a number that was thrown out there by a judge during a pretrial hearing where the judge is like, well, if any of these allegations prove to be true, this would be the amount of money that possibly could be charged against the city. And so, but of course that lawsuit fell apart too. There was never a dime paid as a result of that lawsuit against the city. In fact, the attorneys for Valletta Wallace retracted their lawsuit because they were tired of wasting money chasing a false narrative.
Yeah. Do you ever think there'll be something as big as this between two hip hop stars? That I know The Game and 50 Cent kind of had a bit of beef. Was there ever concern that could have erupted the way it did with Biggie and 2pac?
Well, I think that people in the industry kind of learned a lesson from Biggie and 2pac, saying, man, listen, sometimes we can, create controversy, and that controversy sells records. And so we can, so they started doing like fake beefs, actually, where rappers and stuff would kind of coordinate beefs in order to give the impression to the public, like, wow, look, at Game is beefing with this guy or whatever. But I think that the industry learned also that, like, hey, we've got to be real careful that this doesn't get taken too far, because look at the consequences. Look at how this affected this record company. Look at how this affected this record company when its two primary artists are shot and killed. And then we lose this talent, and we lose the potential that they have to produce more stuff down the road. So I think the industry started to realize, like, man, look how quickly this got out of hand with, Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records. Let's try to avoid that. I mean, I'm hoping that's the mindset of CEOs.
Or you might be coming out of retirement again, Greg.
No, not me, man. I'm done. When I left the police department, I never looked back. It had served its purpose for my life. I did 25 years. I worked on some great cases. I had a great career. I got a great pension, and then a new chapter opened. And so now I'm in that new chapter, and I don't look back, and I certainly would never jump back into that world as professionally as an investigator with an agency. Yeah. Although I do have my own private investigations company, so it kind of sounds a little bit contradictory, but just the bureaucracy and the red tape and the politics of policing these days, and not just these days, but even back then, it wears you down. And once you're liberated from that, it's hard to imagine ever going back and working under those conditions again.
Yeah, like I say, you've had an amazing career, man. You've done a lot of good as well in the world, Greg. Like, you look back at 2pac, and I watch his old videos when, like, he was an actor and a poet, and some of his songs are really powerful to this day. Like, it's sad to then go down that other route, and because he thought he was a gangster when he wasn't. Do you think that's because he was surrounding himself by gangsters as well, that he just tried to put the act on like he was acting that part?
I think that had 2pac, again, as I mentioned earlier, if he had survived that shooting, it's going to be a different 2pac. It's going to be a 2pac that is physically going to be living a much more challenging life, trying to live life with one lung and having to try to recover from the effects of that shooting. So had he lived, it would have been really, really interesting to see what he would have done with himself. And if Biggie had lived, it would have been interesting to see what he had done with himself. And it's just too bad that those guys couldn't rectify their issues, and those labels didn't rectify their issues before um, before before these events happened. So I don't know. To answer your question, James, I would have loved to have met Tupac, after learning who he was and trying to understand him and putting myself in the middle of this conflict, trying to understand what happened. I would have loved to have met both of them. And I obviously developed a newfound appreciation for the music and the talent that was involved. But it is what it is. You can't change history, so to speak. And so you got to just appreciate them and the legacies that they've left behind.
Yeah, can you understand the music now and some of the lyrics, that why people can relate to them so much?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm more sensitive to what they were trying to say, what that voice is trying to say, and understanding it. Not always agreeing with it, but at least understanding it. And so it's been a privilege to work on their cases. I wish I never had to, but it is, since it happened, I feel like I was privileged to be able to work on their cases and to bring some resolution to them.
Yeah, how does that change your life, Greg, then, for being a detective, trying to solve crimes, to then being a celebrity, basically, because everybody then wants a piece of you because you were known worldwide, working on the biggest unsolved cases on the planet. Like, everybody know what the case was, but how does that then change your life to then people want to interview you and make documentaries and books? Like, is that a good obviously it's a good thing because you're creating awareness, it's a business as well, but how does that change your life to try to be under the radar to then being in the limelight?
Well, that was a process. There's a learning curve there. Typically when you are working on cases, you try to keep that information close to the vest. You try to protect your investigation. You don't want it getting compromised. So you keep things very close. And then now all of a sudden you're on the other end where you're sharing all the information with everybody. And so there was a learning curve to figure out how to engage and responsibly try to do this as responsible as possible and as respectfully as possible. But the benefit is I get to meet great people. I've got to meet, just like today here, talking to a guy on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, who's, sitting in the middle of what it's like 8 o'clock at night for you right now.
Yeah.
I just woke up, I'm having my coffee. And so it's a lot of fun. And you get to, and some of the people that you meet now become long-term friends. I have a lot of friends now that I've met only as a result of this investigation. And so it's added to the quality of my life. But obviously it's at the expense of two people. And so it's bittersweet, but I'm thankful that the conversation is still being had. I'm thankful that people still care enough about these two gentlemen to want to talk about it and learn about it. So it's been an interesting journey, but like you said, it's mostly positive.
Yeah, so let's go a full roundup on it all, Greg. What's all the evidence you have and everything that you've got on the full 2pac and Biggie murder?
Yeah, so I think the 2pac and Biggie murder, the 2pac murder is pretty clear. Like, for any rational thinking person, you can look at the facts and the evidence and the information. You're going to draw the same conclusion, is that 2pac put himself in a position where he shouldn't have been. He got himself involved in gang activity. That gang activity ultimately came back and bite him on the ass and got him killed. Orlando Anderson shot and killed Tupac Shakur on September 7th, 1996 in Las Vegas. Orlando Anderson is your murderer. Biggie was killed as a retaliation of that. And Biggie, Suge Knight hired a guy named Poochie to go and kill Biggie in retaliation for the shooting of Tupac. And whether or not Poochie operated alone is the one unknown. We don't know that. There's a good chance that there was somebody else involved, but we've never positively identified that person. But Poochie, Suge Knight, and a female girlfriend of Suge Knight's all conspired to kill Biggie. That's where all the evidence points. That's where all the facts are. The idea that there's this other, conspiracy with police officers. When you really understand the ingredients of that claim and that conspiracy, it all falls apart. But people tend to want to believe it. They like the idea because it's a bigger story. It's more scandalous and sensational. So a lot of people want to accept that. But they don't understand how investigations work. They don't understand why that isn't a plausible explanation anymore. And so that's where we're at with it. I'm settled with that being the truth. That is the truth I'm going to continue to promote. And again, like I'm coming over to the UK, hopefully in May, and going on a speaking tour. And I'll be putting those facts and evidence up on the board for people to evaluate.
And where is your tour? We'll touch on that now. I'll put that at the very start as well, Greg, so people can get involved. So your tour, how many countries are you doing? How many cities are you doing in the UK?
We're doing 7 cities, 2 in London. We're starting in Scotland. I think Edinburgh is the first city. And then from Edinburgh, let me pull this up real quick. All right. So Glasgow.
That's where I'm from, brother.
Yeah, man. I'll see you first.
Yeah, you'll see me first. Yeah, we'll get a catch up. I want to meet. Yeah, get a proper catch up, bro. I'll get you some good Scottish food. Good,
perfect. And what about good Scottish beer? You have that?
Mate, whiskey, mate. You'll fucking blow the tits off you. You're better drinking it after though your show, or you won't make the rest of the tour.
Okay. Yeah. So Glasgow at a place called the Platform at the Arches, I guess. Platform at the Arches.
Yeah.
That's on May 10th, and then Edinburgh on May 12th, and then Manchester May 14th, and then Birmingham, and then a couple of nights in London. So all of this happens in middle of May, and looks like we're going to do 8 different locations or 8 different speaking engagements. So it's going to be great. Yeah. I can't wait. I hope that we can make it.
Yeah, you as well. Everything's starting to open up here. Can you send me the link as well so I can leave it in the description, Greg?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Just before we finish up, brother, the 2pac and Biggie's mum meet each other. They came out. They spoke to each other. Did they not come face to face?
That's a great question, and I should know that, but I don't. I'm assuming that they at the very least talked. I'm confident that they have talked before. I don't know that they've ever met face to face. Obviously, we lost Afeni Shakur a couple of years ago. She's no longer around. Valletta Wallace is still alive, but she's got some of her own health issues. I don't know if they've ever met face to face. To answer your question.
And last question: do you think Suge Knight can ever get done for conspiracy to murder?
No, I don't think Suge Knight's ever going to get charged for conspiracy to commit murder. The only person that could really testify against him at this point, is his girlfriend. I don't think that she's ever going to be willing to do that. And even if she did, she has her own credibility issues because she's got a long criminal history of her own. So it wouldn't be a very likely prosecution. So I don't think that Suge Knight will ever be held accountable for his role in Biggie's murder in a court of law. But I hope that he is held accountable in some other way. I hope that the universe will hold him accountable. And perhaps that's why he's probably going to die in prison as a result of the case that he's incarcerated in for now.
Yeah. Greg, would you like to finish up on anything, brother?
No, just that I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. I appreciate you having me on the podcast today. And I appreciate the conversation. I really do. And I think this conversation is still going to be being had 10 years from now.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a powerful case because it is still unsolved and through the court system. Like, it's just mega. Like in the UK, it's mega. Like, you'll see that here when you go to your shows. Like, people will love them, and we'll make sure we promote this well as well on all my social media platforms. But once you're in Glasgow, we'll get a catch up. I'll take you get some good food, and it'll be good to see you, brother. But
thank you,
for coming on today and being so early, because I know you only had a few hours sleep. I genuinely appreciate it and thoroughly enjoyed your conversation. But God bless you, brother, and I'll drop you a message. Send me the links as well, please, and we'll catch up when you're in Glasgow, brother.
I appreciate you, James. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah.
Have a great day, and
Same to
we'll
you,
see.
brother.
We'll see you in a few months.
Yeah. God bless you, Greg.
All right, buddy.
See you soon,
Thanks
bro.
a lot.
Take
All
care.
right.
Bye.
Bye.